Hey everybody, this is Hair the Dogcast here at the bonus stage at Midwest Gaming Classic 2022. I hope everyone is finding all the games they want, meeting all the cool people, and we have a few wonderful guests here up on the stage right now. Greg from Premium Edition Games is going to be leading a discussion with John from Orebody Inc. to discuss Orebody Binder's Tale, an amazing game that he is working with Premium Edition Games on. So I'm going to throw it over to you guys. Let's do it.
So John, why don't you tell us about your game then?
Sure, yeah. So Orebody's Binder's Tale is the first part of a transmedia universe that we're starting under the general title of Orebody, which is a kind of a key planet in this sci-fi fantasy story. Orebody's Binder's Tale is developed for the NES, so it's an old school 8-bit kind of retro shooter inspired primarily by both Contra and Mega Man. So I like to describe it as if Contra and Mega Man had a weird sci-fi fantasy baby. That's the game in a nutshell. I think it will be both very familiar but also very new and exciting.
So what would you say is the difficulty level kind of close to Mega Man or Contra, because those are both known as tougher games?
You know, it's a scaling difficulty. In my previous games, they tend to be pretty hard. So Orebody starts out very approachable, but quickly by I would say the second, third level, it becomes a challenge. So it has a little bit of the approachability, maybe that is unlike classic games. But then once you get into it, it does demand that you learn the mechanics and that you learn the patterns, and it has that kind of old school flavor.
Okay, and you did say it was kind of inspired by Mega Man, so do you get to pick different levels, or do you get different power-ups, kind of like the Mega Man bosses?
The structure isn't really like Mega Man. It's much more of a Contra kind of linear structure, but it's inspired by Mega Man in the fact that there's, it's sort of a side-scrolling shooter. You play as a small robot. It has a similar feel at times, but again, the Contra element is that it's much more action-packed, much more focused. And it doesn't just have 8 bosses. There are over 15 robot bosses that get continuously harder until the end.
Oh, that's really cool to see. So are each bosses at each level, or would you say that there's multiple bosses in a single level?
Yeah, just like the difficulty, it ramps up. It starts with each level having a mid boss and then a end boss, and then by level 3 there's 3 bosses, and then by level 4 there's 4, and then the final level there's I'm not going to say, but many bosses. It's a gauntlet.
Oh, it's like a boss
without repetition too, so they're all original.
Oh, that's really cool. So you don't have to fight the same boss twice if you had a lot of difficulty fighting one of the earlier ones then.
That's maybe, exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool. Anything else you can really kind of share about the game that we haven't really talked about? You did say it was based around Contra as well, so is there tons of enemies just kind of spamming the screen and respawning and stuff too, or?
Yeah, I mean, within the limitations of the NES 8-bit architecture and the game's own sort of base code, I try to have a constant enemy presence and a danger and a kind of a feeling of threat on every screen, almost every screen. There is a bit of platforming to it, which I guess would be a little bit more of the Mega Man influence.
Yes.
There are screens dedicated more toward platforming acumen than necessarily blasting. So especially in the later levels, it starts to play with that rhythm a little bit.
So probably one of the dreaded questions is, I know from Castlevania-style games, they always have those Medusa wave pattern enemies. Do you have those built in as well? Because I know those can be very difficult to dodge, and NES games are notorious for having those repeating enemies that continue to spawn and just make that wave pattern.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to say I did experiment with that enemy movement type, and it did not make the final cut. So there are no Medusa head-like wave patterns that I know have been the ire of many gamers. So.
Awesome. Is there any kickback too? So if you get hit by an enemy, you get launched back?
I guess I didn't really mention. That comes from its Contra Influence, so it is one-hit death, but you do respawn where you die. So on the easier difficulty, you start with 8 lives, which is a lot. There's a harder difficulty where you every time you continue, you only have 3 lives. So it's easy to, like I said, get into on that easy difficulty. It's a one-hit kill, but you have 8 chances, unlimited continues as well. So I guess, again, it's that sort of balancing of approachable versus like brutality, and it does get quite difficult. So.
That's great to hear that it's infinite continues, because I know some of the NES games like, oh, you only get to continue 2 or 3 times, and then...
Yeah, absolutely no. I know how frustrating that is. So.
Do you actually continue from the start of the level, or do you...
Yeah, exactly. So I played around with checkpoints, but I kind of like there is consequence to ultimately losing all your lives, but you just start at the beginning of the level that you're currently on with a full set of lives, depending on if you're on easy or harder difficulty.
Awesome. Is there any like point-based system, kind of like the traditional old school games too? Like I know first Mega Man had like a point-based system, and they kind of scrapped it going forward with 2, and Contra definitely has a lot of points where you like earn extra lives as well.
Yeah. So this is somewhere where I kind of differ from a lot of my peers who make new classic NES games. I've never really cared about points. I've played Mario Brothers thousands of times, other than the fact that I know fireworks appear, or you get like one-ups more tied to coins. But I just never cared, and like I really like a clean interface. Yeah. Even though it's weird on the NES, but it kind of creates this immersion where the only UI is your lives, and I don't have a point system at all. So it's a very narrative and mechanics-driven game.
Okay, is it also, like, I know it has the Contra Influence where we get the different weapons. Is it always overwrite, or do you get to switch between weapons like Mega Man? Because that was a big thing about Mega Man, is just switching between the different power-ups that you get. Yeah,
I played with the idea of kind of having collectible weapons from the Mega Man influence, but I just really love the Contra moment-to-moment choice where as the canister, and it uses the same mechanic, flies across the screen, you can blast it, and then you'll see the kind of weapon power up, and it's random. Like, do you pick that up? Are you happy with where you are? Do you know a boss is coming up if you've played that level before, where one's going to be better than the other? And so there's a kind of moment-by-moment decision that I ultimately went with that system, rather than giving the player sort of like an arsenal to choose between. So I've talked to players different ways, but ultimately that's kind of the style I went with.
Awesome. Is there like Contra was really big with having that spread gun, and that was kind of overpowered at times. So is there something like that like in your game too, or is it more present later on when you probably really need it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a version of the spread. It's more of a multi-shot. It's like a spread with only 2 bullets. Okay. I love the spread, and this is kind of my version within the design of the game. So I think a real spread would kind of break a lot of it, yeah. But it acts in a similar way.
Yeah, because that range in the original Contra made it really insane and made it a lot easier to play those very difficult levels. So it's good to have that balance, and you don't want to make it too overpowered, but you also want to make it sure that you're not just getting mowed over very cleanly too. So
yeah, and it's much more about sort of learning enemy patterns and level design patterns than necessarily relying on a weapon to get you through a situation. I think depending on what your preferences are, any of the weapons, you could stick with them as long as you don't die, and just play through the entire game that way.
Awesome. Is there like a machine gun mechanic too, where you could shoot lots of shots like in a row? Because Contra, that was another big weapon with Contra.
Yeah, I guess I could break down the weapons quick.
Yeah.
You have your standard blaster, which is kind of a shot every couple seconds. There's a boomerang that comes back to you, so you have that advantage. There is the multi-shot, kind of like a spread, but less projectiles. There is what I call kind of a plasma explosion, where it shoots out and then bursts into 2 projectiles. One goes up and one goes down, so you can kind of, when you memorize the distance of that explosion, you can kind of use it strategically. And then there's a laser, which is just a very, very fast and efficient. So and it also reaches the farthest, all the way across the screen. So you can have different strategies on bosses if you want to keep your distance using that weapon versus something like the spread, where if you get close enough, you could hit with multiple projectiles. So there's a little bit of strategy there.
Okay, in terms of like some of the levels, do you have are they pretty much all like side-scrolling, like left to right, or do you have other levels that are like right to left, or maybe even like a vertical level, like going up or down?
Yeah, so it's split across 5 unique stages, and each stage is sort of split up into its own sections that include scrolling left to right, vertical, sometimes you're going down, No right to left though. Didn't think about it, but
Yeah.
I just had that sort of like Mario Brothers linear kind of view. But yeah.
Yeah, no. Sometimes it wasn't until like Mario 3 where actually like kind of like there was a portion of the level we went right to left. So
that's right. Yeah.
And then obviously with like Mario Maker, you can do basically everything. So yeah.
Yeah, there's an interesting. I think I was watching a YouTube video and someone's talking about in sort of like the right to left as being endemic to like the side scroller is kind of also like because we read right to left. It's sort of like this unspoken kind of like progress trajectory. So like you always, as you're going, you're feeling like you're progressing. And when you go the opposite direction, it feels there's some kind of feel that's a little bit different to it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I know it's not really particular to like Contra or Mega Man, but are there like auto-scrolling levels type as well?
No auto-scrolling. Played around with it, but ended up just kind of not having that. So.
Yeah, that's pretty good because sometimes that survival stuff can be pretty hard with like enemy spam, and then obviously restarting without a checkpoint, you have to redo the entire thing over again and go at the pace of the scroller, which could be slow or fast depending on the level design.
I mean, that's exactly right. Like with the design of my game, like because you spawn where you stop. I guess you could stop the camera, but anyway, I never really liked that kind of stuff. And the majority of the challenge is sort of the enemy patterns in the everyday the levels, and then also like the 15 bosses, each with their own unique kind of encounter. So.
Is there any like environmental like challenges, like jumping over like lava or water or like spikes or even the infamous bottomless pits? And
so you're getting back into like again my preferences. Like I hate death pits. I hate like Castlevania or Ninja Gaiden. Like this is like anathema to me. So I do only have quote unquote death pits in the final level, and you just respawn at the beginning of that stage, and it's only for the first part. So that's sort of like my nod to that design philosophy. But otherwise, there are environmental hazards and spikes, thorns, hurt tiles, I guess you could say generically.
Yeah, because definitely the original Contra had a number of that stuff with like the dodging the pits, and then like the stage 3 was completely vertical. So if you like jump the screen too high, and then if you fall down, then
and I know people expect that, but again, like I make stuff that I want to play, and that kind of stuff frustrates me no end. So I just don't include it.
Yeah, sometimes it just really sucks to barely miss a jump by just a pixel or whatever, a frame, and then like all of a sudden
absolutely
respawning at the very beginning of the level again. So
there's enough hard stuff in the game. I don't want to like add frustration on top of it. So
now it is like actually like 2 players because Contra was well known to have co-op.
Unfortunately, no. It's single player only. Again, that's more of just because of the limitations of what the game is doing versus what the NES can do, and the fact that unfortunately I don't have the expertise of the Contra team. So even that game, it's very hard to pull off what they did, and so it's single player only.
Yeah, because then you have to worry about like friendly fire and all sorts of other fun stuff that you don't even have to worry about either. So sometimes it's fun just to play by yourself too. So.
Yeah. It's. I mean, again, it's even though we're using Contra and Mega Man, right? It's kind of its own thing, and it's really narrative driven. So it is very much like a single player, action-packed story that I think does some surprising things for those, especially those who play through the entire thing. I think NES games don't generally go to the places that this game goes.
Awesome, and I know Contra is very infamous with the Konami code. Did you have any sort of cool Easter eggs kind of thing in your game?
Not that I'm ready to talk about right now, no.
Awesome. So we might be able to expect like a little secret going on forward after the game comes out. Anything else that you wanted to share about your game, or you think about wrapped up?
Just that I think people will be able to play it first on the Premium Classic.
Yeah, the Classic Edition level Series 1 that will be
on the Switch.
Yeah, will be released. We'll have more information on the Premium Edition Games website for pre-orders, hopefully going live either like later this month or early next month to be sent out later this year. So
yeah, that's the first place to play Orebody Binder's Tale. There will be an NES release, but we don't have any announcements about that right now.
Yeah, so you can check it out with premiumeditiongames.com, and thanks for giving me your time today.
Thanks a lot.